We're going to talk about the early governments in America and what ended up happening in the government that came right after the Revolution, before we actually created the Constitution. So the U.S. Constitution took some time to create. So in the meantime, we needed to have some type of government in the U.S. First, we started with some state governments. New Hampshire first detailed a written plan of government. They had their first state constitution. Each state had a legislature, and most were bicameral, which means that they had two political sides. Each state had a governor. Each state also had courts and judges. Most states' constitutions had a Bill of Rights. Okay, so a lot of this was not done on a national level. It was done just within states. The first constitution in New Hampshire, the first state had a written constitution. This is what it looked like. They decided to have a legislature, which is basically like a Congress to make the laws. They had a governor to execute, an executive to carry out all of the laws. They had judges and courts. These guys interpreted the laws and constitutions, and it was bicameral. So they had two branches or the chambers within their government. The formation of a national government. 13 separate states couldn't defeat Great Britain. Continental Congress decided to form a confederation. Articles of Confederation, this is basically what they decided to create. They came together and they created this document. This is the first national constitution of the United States. It provided for a very loose system of cooperation among the states. So it came up with laws, but it wasn't as strict as the Constitution is now. They could not defeat them on their own. Okay, so they created these laws, but they were not able to just get rid of them on their own. They had to come together to come up with this plan. Here are some of the strengths of the Articles of Confederation. We're going to spend the rest of the week talking about the Articles of Confederation, so you have a better idea of some of the ideas that they actually put in this document, that some of them carried over to the Constitution. Congress can control a national army. It was important to coordinate against foreign threats like Great Britain, so they needed to have an army ready to go because they were currently at war when this was created. And Congress could deal with foreign governments. The central representation dealing directly with other governments. So you ended up having a couple people who were sent over to other countries, especially during wartime, in order to communicate, and they came up with a plan for that, which is huge because they needed to have some plan. Future accomplishments of the Articles of Confederation. In 1785, they had an ordinance, and the Confederation Congress set up a system of surveying and selling Western lands, and townships were divided into 6 square miles. So it was important to start coming up with plans on how to sell land and also how to acquire land so the country could get bigger, but also so the country could make money off of the land. They also have the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. The Confederation Congress set up a system for admitting new states with measures to outlaw slavery in the new Western states. These laws were important for Western expansion. So this was to keep extending the country and to gain more states. The Ordinance of 1785 and the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 provided for the orderly admission and administration of Western territories. That just means it allowed to start expanding and to have a government set up in this new land. Here are some of the weaknesses of the article. It required 9 states to ratify a new law. So any law that they wanted to do, 9 out of 13 states had to agree on it. All 13 required to change or amend. So if they want to change or amend a law, which means to switch some of the wording, all 13 states had to do that together. Congress couldn't enforce its laws. So if a state ignored a law, Congress could do nothing about that. So even if you were a state that decided, I'm just going to play along, but we're not going to follow the law, nothing would actually be done about that. And Congress couldn't tax citizens. So if you can't tax any citizens, how are you going to support an army? How are you going to be able to do anything within your government? So these are some of the weaknesses. The biggest problems with the article, sorry, I have to keep moving myself around. Let's see. They couldn't tax. So how do you pay for anything, including war? And Congress had to borrow a lot of money. States went into debt, and then they had no way to get that money back, so they started to overtax their citizens, the states that could tax their citizens, which started to look a lot like what was happening with the British and the colonists. The Treaty of Paris in 1783, this ended the Revolutionary War. Ben Franklin and John Adams represented the United States. David Hartley and Richard Oswald represented Great Britain. Then you have something called Shays Rebellion. A Massachusetts farmer, Daniel Shay, couldn't pay his high taxes. The Massachusetts government threatened to take his land because he wasn't paying his taxes. And Shay led 1,500 farmers, 1,500 farmers, in rebellion against the Massachusetts government, the federal arsenal, which is where we used to have all of our weapons. Shay's rebellion sent a wake-up call to other states and forced the U.S. to develop a stronger government that could support its people. So that way states weren't abusing people, but also so they could still make taxes. All right, those are all of the things you need to know right now for the Articles of Confederation. During this week, you're going to learn a little bit more about it.